Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of AI Inside. This is a show where we take a look at the AI hiding inside of everything. And boy, howdy, do we have an episode that proves that fact. This has been quite the week, and it's only Wednesday. Those are the weeks that I love because it gives us plenty to talk about and plenty to marvel at. I'm Jason Howell, joined as always by Jeff Jarvis. How you doing, Jeff?
Hey, boss. How are you?
Excellent.
I think I see an IO 10 on you.
Well, when we were watching the keynote, we were under the tent, so we weren't, out in the sun, thankfully. But then throughout the day, you're walking around and you're checking out things. I do have, though, a water mug, so there's that. It's, it's a pretty stylish water mug, I gotta say.
Yeah.
It's no device. It's not getting,
when I was there,
hardware.
I used to get a phone.
Yeah, no phone this year. I was wondering if there were going to be 8As, handed out for review and stuff, and that didn't happen. So anyways, it's all good. Being there was the gift enough, I guess. Sure. We'll just say that. Coming to this show here in a moment, we have a really special guest, someone who I enjoy getting the chance to podcast with. I'm going to bring him in a moment. But before we get started, big thank you, huge thank you to the people who help us do this show, who support us directly via Patreon. That's patreon.com/AI Inside Show. Brad Richwine is one of our amazing patrons. Brad, thank you for supporting us as we do this independent podcast. And all of you who support, we literally couldn't do it without you. So thank you. All right. So bringing on to this episode, and boy, this is the perfect week to have Mike Elgan on. Mike is the author of Machine Society on Substack. I mean, you've had a Substack for a very long time.
Yes.
You've recently kind of redesigned it and renamed it and doubled down on the AI implications of everything.
Absolutely. So essentially this newsletter has existed for 24 years. I started in 2000. That itself was a recreation of a newsletter I did for Windows Magazine. But when I went independent, I've been doing it. It's called Mike's List. It was a terrible name back in the day. Craig Newmark influenced everybody back then. Nobody remembers this, but in 2000, everything was a list because of Craig's List.
That's right.
And so I had Mike's List, and I always hated the name because it was dated. And at some point I'm like, what is this really about? And what it's really about is human beings, human culture, human society, and how machines, how AI, how next generation interfaces like spatial computing are and will change us. And so I changed the name, and there it is after 24 years.
Love it. Excellent name. Machine Society tells you exactly what you're looking for, and so perfect for this moment. I mean, and especially for today. I mean, there is hardly a news story that involves technology right now. And maybe that's a hint of just the saturation of this idea of AI and everything. But there's hardly news that's in technology that doesn't have something to do with AI.
That's right. And that's true on the funding side too. So if you're a startup and you're not touching AI in any way, good luck. It's really tough out there.
You better have it in there somehow, somewhere.
Right. And there's a lot of AI washing as well. People, you have to throw AI in there, whether you have AI or not. And it's easy enough to put AI in now, thanks to the APIs that are available to everyone. But still, it's really eating the world, so to speak.
AI washing, putting AI into everything is the perfect segue for, I think, what is going to probably occupy the first half of this show. And just to, so everyone knows, I was down in Mountain View yesterday. I was invited to go to Google's, why am I suddenly blanking? Google I/O conference. It didn't have AI in the title. That's why I couldn't remember. It should have been Google
I'm surprised
AI
they didn't
instead of
change the
I/O.
name to Google AI.
No kidding. They really could get away with that if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Had the opportunity to talk with Dave Burke and Samir Samat from the Android team for my other podcast, Android Faithful. So you can check that out if you like. A wonderful interview with them where I was behind the scenes. I got to do the work of the Twit engineers and be the tech guy while the rest of the hosts interviewed. So it was a nice change of pace. But anyone who watched the keynote, if all you saw was the keynote from yesterday's event, I mean, Sundar Pichai called it out at the very end of the episode. If you were playing bingo and you had AI or Gemini on your card, I mean, you were hammered. You were probably dead to alcohol poisoning by the end of the episode.
It was about nothing else but AI.
Yep.
When you get down to it, absolutely everything was AI. Google's been saying for years, that they're the AI company. They've been doing AI. They have AI and everything, but they never got credit. Along came Microsoft and OpenAI and ChatGPT, and everybody forgot everything that Google had done in translation and search and everything else. But yesterday it was clearly this is the AI company.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, for sure. I will say, just as a footnote to the events that you mentioned in the keynote, Google's really got to learn from Apple about how to generate pretend excitement for their events. So what Apple does is, first of all, they invite the journalists who are like super. They don't invite the critics. And the second thing is they got ringers throughout. They have like Apple employees, people on the team in the audience who are just yeah, exactly. And I think they're also miking the audience. So it just seems like, even when they're doing these videos, so Google's just kind of playing it straight. They don't have a bunch of like, people, deliberately clapping, all that kind of stuff, and they don't mic it correctly. So it sounds like, when they announced Gems, for example, there was one guy, and then everybody sort of politely chimed in. Wrong energy, because they were announcing a lot of groundbreaking stuff.
They were. And that's, being there, I felt a different energy than I think people watching it on a screen did. And I think you're absolutely right. I think, one of the big challenges, and maybe this is more a logistic challenge than it is an excitement about announcements challenge, is the fact that it's Shoreline Amphitheater. Like, this is a stadium that requires like a band like Radiohead to come in and fill it in order to feel that noise and energy. And you put a tech conference in there. And I mean, there was noise while we were there, but I mean, it takes a lot to fill that place. And, maybe they just aren't miking it correctly. That would help generate some excitement.
The other problem is they're developers. They're not like, they're not
event
guzzling cult members. They're developers, and the developers are not exactly, the most, excited audience sometimes.
Yeah, indeed. Before we kind of get into the wall, what I've been calling the wall of AI noise that was yesterday, because at a certain point it just became noise. It's like, this is all amazing, and I'm really like, I'm here for it. But it's really hard to look at that wall of AI noise and pull out like that's the thing,
Yeah.
But I did hear a few quotes that I jotted down as they passed by. One was, I can't remember who said it, but on the path to AGI. It was like within the first 10 minutes, as we venture on the path to AGI, kind of
sure this
throwing
is
that out there.
No, AGI is BS. That's I'm sticking with that. It's not, we're not going to be there. There's no such thing. The thing can't add. It doesn't know a fact. It doesn't know meaning. It still does amazing things. And that's the problem. They've set themselves up for a fall by this incredible expectation that it's going to be us. And I think that the other big thing I saw with both Google and OpenAI is a mistake of anthropomorphization. With the voices they used, with as Leo Laporte said, as we were watching OpenAI, the prosody that they've amplified, the uhs and the efforts to be human. I think that's in the end going to be a huge mistake, because A, we don't want it to be human. B, it's going to fail at being human. C, it's going to set the stakes wrong. It can do phenomenal, amazing things. It can transcribe, huge numbers of hours of tapes and find interesting patterns in that. And that's all phenomenal. And no human can do that. And we should be grateful that it can do that. Instead, it can't act like a smart parrot.
I have a theory about that, which is that, we tend to give Silicon Valley geniuses the benefit of the doubt, especially the engineers who are working on things like AI. We're like, well, can't even understand, I didn't understand what you do. Like, it's like crazy, complicated stuff that requires PhDs and stuff like that. But we have to remember that these are human beings. So when people like Elon Musk wants to build a humanoid robot, and companies like OpenAI want to build AGI, to a very, very large extent, they are living out the sci-fi of their youth. That's what's captured them. And they just think that's got to be the future, and that's the ideal future. I've been criticizing the concept of a humanoid robot for many years, because people think, well, of course, we're going to have humanoid robots walking around amongst us. Well, no, we won't want that, really. We'll want it in certain circumstances. The only reason to have a humanoid robot, by the way, is like for military applications. You have a robot that has to be able to open a car door and sit in the seat, right? Just, you're in a hurry. In general, you want robots and AI in all the stuff everywhere all the time if you want a futuristic society, one that's shaped like a human and walks around with AGI. This is a extraordinarily expensive, energy consuming, and unnecessary and ultimately undesirable product.
So Jason, what impressed you about Google's as you sat there?
What impressed me? I mean, again, I go back to the wall of noise and how it becomes a kind of diminishing returns at a certain point. I realized that their intention yesterday was to show, hey, we're as big a player as anybody in this world of, in this current moment with AI. We've been there since, earlier than most others that you're seeing, making the news right now, and check out how we're bringing this into all the products, which, ultimately I think I've thought that's a pretty good idea. Like if you've got, all of these products and platforms that people are already using, put the AI into them so that people don't have to go places to use it. And that's essentially what they're doing. But I find myself kind of getting a little numb in the same way that you remember when Assistant suddenly had like the ability to have all of these commands, and it was like, wow, Assistant could do all these things. That's really amazing. But then as a user, it could almost do too many things that it was too much for my mind to organize. And I ended up not doing anything. And that's kind of where I find myself falling a little bit here is like, man, it really is. I don't know where to direct my attention because there's just so much, and that's impressive, to the point but it's also oppressive.
Yeah. And to the point about assistants and assistant appliances like the Amazon Echo, Apple HomePod and all that stuff, people use them for cooking timers. That's basically what and playing music and, they use them for three things. And so, right. But part of that is because it's not AI. They don't have any agency. They don't suggest. They don't enter conversations. In the case of something like Siri, you say, well, give me this answer. And it's like, well, here's some stuff I found on the web. I'm like, okay, thanks. I could have done a Google search. That's really helpful. I do think if we want to direct attention, one of the places is the video of Project Astra, which is a series of features that are coming, where the demonstrator walked around with a Pixel phone running Astra and just saying, show me the devices in this office that make noise. And it's like, well, that's a speaker. And identifying parts of the speaker. All very impressive. It's more or less what they fake demoed last year. And this time it was a real demo, which they made a point of thing. Well, they said I've taken them at face value. And then the, there was really great stuff, except the difference is that OpenAI is saying, okay, this is coming in a few weeks, and Google's like maybe later this year.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the implementation that Google had, which does a few things that nobody else can do, it's going to be, and it's got to be pretty power intensive. And I think the illusion that it creates is that you have this intelligent thing sort of paying attention to what it sees and can identify things. And then later it's like, hey, did you see my glasses when I was, sweeping there? And it's like, yeah, it's right next to the Apple.
That was the impressive part.
Yeah.
And so that was where everyone went, ooh, that was one of the few moments I would say where everyone was like, oh, that was surprising. You know what I mean? That kind of was surprising.
Yes.
And it also says that we're going to be using these things, bingo, through glasses. I'm getting PTSD.
Exactly.
Seeing that right now, Jason. Jason,
you know what?
So
for audio listeners, I'm wearing my Google Glass from
with a dead battery, or is that battery still viable?
Oh, I have not charged it. It's literally a set prop at this point. I almost wore it yesterday because I just wondered, like, okay, like at the end of the day, that's where all this stuff is really heading. Like any of the hold up your phone and point it at the thing and let it, translate and do all this stuff. Like at the end of the day, we are going to want that feature without the resistance of having to hold up a panel in between us. So it's all heading to the glasses. So when we saw the glasses in that Astra demo, that was like, okay, there we go. Let's, game on. Let's do this.
Once again, how many times a day do you need to ask, what is that?
Yeah.
How many times a day? I mean, I think that the interesting part is you see this interface between writing something down, looking at a whiteboard, and having it react to or looking at a screen. I think that's interesting. And I'm eager to play the glasses, even though having spent a fortune on Google Glass. But what's interesting to me, going to one of the things you said, Mike, is this is a weird way to put it. There's not much of a barrier to entry to development around AI now. That is to say that all these companies are to me are within inches of each other.
Yeah.
And it's about scale. How many, Google's big announcement really yesterday was that it can take more tokens into what it deals with live for you.
Was it 2 million?
Yeah, I think so. And that's great. I mean, I could put in a whole
2 million. That's
manuscript
right.
to deal with it. Speed. OpenAI was about speed. Trying to be more efficient and use less power, one hopes. But these are all just gradations on a chart. Since Google came out with Transformer and neural networks, they're all pretty much doing the same thing.
Right.
They have the resources to have the data and to have the power and the compute to do it. But I don't see much differentiation right now. Do you?
Yeah.
Do you separate them out?
There are minor differentiations, and some of them are
Strengths
interesting.
and
And I want the
weaknesses.
future to be, I'll take some of this and some of that, and so on. I would before we move on from the impressive AI behind some of the features they're talking about, I would encourage people, and we're not talking a lot about this these days, but to revisit Notebook LM, which is Google's experimental note-taking thing. Well, that already has Gemini 1.5 Pro in it, so it's already they just got to
pay for it.
That's right. And so this is quite an amazing thing. Basically, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's a notebook app, but you can just dump stuff in it. It's multimodal. You can dump PDFs and all kinds of stuff in there, and then just have a conversation with your notes and just say, well, how, when is this happening?
Love
What's,
that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's a great practical way because almost all of us take notes and that sort of thing. But one of the things that one of the chatbots that I use that hardly anybody else uses or talks about too much is Pi.ai. It was a flavor of the month for like a week, and then like people, everything's moving so fast. But Pi.ai is really interesting. It's problematic in two senses, which is that it has these very human-like voices. So if you thought the Scarlett Johansson voice from OpenAI was a bit much, this is even more so for some of the voices that it has. It has this one like female voice assistant that has like what do they call it, a vocal fry, and like very like and ah and all that kind of stuff, very laying it on thick. That's a problem. But one thing that's interesting that it has that nobody else has, it has a certain level of agency. So I've used Ray-Ban Meta glasses, but running the app for Pi.ai on the phone so I can hear and talk to it through my glasses. Once you are running the chat interface, is just listening all the time. It will stay on for 10 hours listening. It never shuts off. And if you say anything, it'll comment on what you say, even if you're talking to somebody else. But what's interesting about it is I'll walk around, and I was at the time when I first did this and I first wrote about it, I was in Mexico City's Historic Center. I'm like, well, tell me a little bit about the history of the Mexico City's Historic Center. And there was like chat. And it's like, by the way, do you know about X? Are you planning to visit there? And I'm like, wow, I'm here right now. She's like, oh, well, that's amazing. You should check out. And it was like, I just had it on, right? And I was just, it was just there. And it was a really interesting psychological event, really, to just have this like disembodied voice. And I think that's one of the directions we're going in. But to your point about the assistance, the lack of agency causes people to never really use it. Whereas if you have something that's encouraging, nudging you, a lot of these chatbots are like, after you do a query, it gives you some more options for maybe you should explore this, maybe you should explore that. We're going to be talking to these things a lot. And so we need it to be a conversation and not be a one true answer type of thing. When it gives us a result, it should sort of like have the awareness, not awareness, but it should pretend to have the awareness to say, well, you should really consider this because there's this really, brilliant guy, Jeff Jarvis, who wrote an alternative opinion to this. You should consider that. Well, what did he say exactly? Well, and so that's the kind of thing that will make these super valuable when it's a conversation rather than like, here's the answer, because we don't want that.
I got to say, the voices I heard, especially out of OpenAI's demonstration on Monday, but also Google's, those are fake people I do not want to be next to on an airplane for more than 10 minutes. This faux cheeriness.
Very California centric. Like,
and also,
what I mean? Like,
I saw someone on LinkedIn and linked to a piece about how early in the days of military aircraft, they put in women's voices to issue warnings. That they were it was just audio recordings that people made on the planes, but they thought this would be a way to grab attention of pilots. Why women's voices? What does it say about this machine that we expect to be kind of a servant is being presented as an overly friendly woman who it just strikes me as this came from a bunch of men.
Well, that's I read that today, and one person made this observation that the mostly male engineers are really trying to create the perfect girlfriend.
A little bit of incel here about this.
Well, and how many times did you see her just that single word either tweeted or spoken or anything in the last couple of days between OpenAI's announcement, and what we heard coming from Google. And then and I will admit, you can retract my geek card because I've actually not watched her, even though I feel like I know so much about it. I need to actually watch it. But yes, like it really does feel like that's a part of what's going on here. And then I will also say, Jeff, we've talked on this show about people who do need companionship in some way, shape, or form, and how these tools can be tools for them in that regard. But it can get weird and murky real fast when you go down that road too,
So if I go somewhere else, the freak out I'm seeing today after yesterday is from publishers and creators online. Because now that Google is going to show the ability, and I'm nervous about this because once again, generative AI has no sense of meaning or fact or truth. And it's not hallucination. It's not a lie because it doesn't know how to tell the truth. Having said that caveat, we're going to see Google, and I already saw some of it in some search queries I made, come up with its own boxes to give us information. On the one hand, the media folks are freaking out because they're going to lose traffic. On the other hand, Google did show recipes yesterday with credit to the recipe holders. But then again, how many chocolate cake recipes are all that special? Let's be honest. Mike's wife might disagree because she can find really special chocolate cake recipes in Mexico.
So true.
But what struck me more than anything else is the creators looking at this from their perspective, understandably so. I'm going to lose traffic. If you look at this from the user's perspective, who really wants to have to force to go to look for and go to a YouTube video and have to watch it for 12 minutes to see how to tighten one bolt?
Right.
And so if Google could just tell us, this is your problem, tighten this bolt, then that is clearly better for the user. But the larger issue to me here is I have been arguing for some time that the news industry should create an API for its news and for its content and go to the AI companies and say, okay, here's the deal. You can have our current credible information, but we want you to credit us. And, we want some money too. And here's the API and here's the key. But what that says is the entire destination strategy of media, the entire attention strategy of media goes up in smoke. And so we never did figure out the internet media. And here we are at a next generation where the information is going to be delivered to people in a new way that's going to be better for them. And it's going to be hard to fight against that and say, no, you got to hold all that back. And what's happening in the US and in Europe mainly is fighting that, is suing these companies, expecting bags of money rather than saying, oh crap, people are going to want this.
Right.
How do we fit into it?
Yeah.
And I see where the media is in even weaker shape now than it was 20 years ago, obviously. And the freak out is going to be worse, and the legislation and the regulation and the suits that are going to come up. It's going to be, and by now, by the way, Google and Meta have said, screw you, news industry, you're a pain to deal with. We don't need you. Right. And so the hostility is going to be really interesting to watch. The efforts to extend copyright, the efforts to fight for fair use, the efforts to fight for the user here are going to be really interesting, I think, out of the last 2 days' presentations. Curious what you guys that whole
Meanwhile, what's happening is one of the disappointing things about the Google search component of what they announced yesterday is that there's actually a real crisis in Google search, which is that small websites, bloggers, people like that can demonstrate their traffic declining to as little as 10% of what it was like a year ago, because Google search is just not serving these small sites, almost certainly because people are churning out garbage, that AI generated garbage in such huge quantities that Google search engines are not up to the task of sifting through all that
They
stuff.
can't sift.
That's where we need them to apply AI to do the wheat and chaff analysis on this kind of stuff. What they're doing instead is they're basically saying that AI isn't reliable enough yet, so we're not going to really use it to generate results. What we're going to use is we're going to patch together all this useful stuff for you and plan your vacation and stuff like that. That great, but like what we really need is for Google to be smarter, like Perplexity AI. Perplexity AI actually has their own version of PageRank that is more clear about separating reliable sources of information from the unreliable, and that's one of the reasons. And then it, of course, links to those sources. So when it makes a claim, when it makes a point, it's like, well, click here to go read the article that we got this from. That's great, you know. But I would love to see Google worry more about the quality of what you get on Google search rather than, oh, you're a consumer. Well, here's all these ways you can consume things.
Yeah. One thing that I find interesting about this whole search announcement, and basically for those who don't know, the generative kind of search experience is coming to everyone. I think it's opt out, not opt in. So you're going to get it by default. Oh, and actually, if I remember correctly, I read that you can't even opt out of it for the time being. So once you see it, it's just there. They're basically saying, you got to try this, and you're going to try it at some point. Your curiosity is going to get the best of you, and you're going to try it.
Yeah.
But one thing that I was reading through a Search Engine Land article by Barry Schwartz, and in the article basically says that Google says that click-through rate is higher on AI overview cards than on normal search results. I just find that really hard to believe, but Google's saying it. I don't know. I can't like wrap my brain around that. And if that is true, then perhaps, you know, there is something to the fact that, you know, the summary isn't the end stop, because Janko Rutgers, actually, I ran into him yesterday, and he interviewed me for an article that he's writing about the news around YouTube creators, and, you know, being able to go to a YouTube video and essentially say, I don't want to watch this video, instead summarize it. And he's like, well, how do you feel as a creator? And I was kind of like, well, you know what? I get it. Like, sometimes I don't want to sit through 10 minutes, and if the information's there and it's easy for me to get, but at a certain point, it just kind of feels like if there is no incentive for the person to create the thing, then there will be less things created. Therefore, there's less things for the AI to pull from.
Right.
And, you know, the whole value chain falls down.
Well, that's the argument that's made, and the creators must be paid and so on and so forth. But if you look at what's happened in the music industry, a lot of people create music not knowing they're not going to get rich, knowing they're not going to make money, right? You know, have tons of friends like that, right, Jason? I know you're going to get rich, but you know, your musical.
I mean, I'm definitely creating not to get rich right now. That's
right.
Proof is in the pudding there.
And so much, you know, I think the other problem here is that I mainly say media here, but I'll also say the world, ruined the web. We screwed it up. We screwed it up because we put in SEO is more evil than I knew.
Yeah.
It meant that everybody had to create the same thing to try to beat somebody else by one spot in a search result. And so the repetition on it is incredible. It is wasteful as can be. It's not unique. Yeah. So where do you go in this new world? I think you have to have unique value, unique information or perspective or expertise. And that AI is going to be more under pressure to answer the question, how do you know that?
The intent should be discovery and not replacement of content creators. So for example, and I go back to, I find myself pointing to Perplexity AI as doing certain things better than most, but they have an option for the pro version where you can say, you do a query and you're like, how do you turn a screw? And then you say, just from YouTube. I don't want to see it from anywhere else, just YouTube. You can also do Wolfram Alpha, a bunch of others, or also just the links that I give you. But you can do YouTube. That's a major thing. So it will say, oh, you turn a screw like A, B, C. And it gives you, it gives you the links. And if you are an engaged user, which I don't know what percentage of people really are, and you click through and you realize, okay, I've asked, out of the last 10 things I've asked about home repair, 3 of them were this certain person. This person seems to be really answering my questions. I'm going to go there, subscribe to their channel. So you want to lead people to discovery of what they really want, to the content creators. and not just say, well, we're just going to take their information and just give you that information. You want both, actually. Like, give me the information and then tell me where you got it.
Just real quick, just to call out an audience member, Ozone Nightmare. Thank you for the tip or the super thanks or whatever. But he says, as a creator, I remain unafraid. Unique voices with meaningful things to express will be fine. I still feel these things will crest the hype cycle and end up as background tools, not culture destroyers. So it's kind of similar to what you're saying.
Sure.
Or it feels funny calling you. Should I call you Ozone or Nightmare?
You can call him Joe.
Mr.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the less we look at these things as competitors and the more we understand them as tools, the better off we're going to be. And it has happened time and time before. I'm going to do a Gutenberg moment here. Get your drinks ready. But print was seen that way, and the provenance of it was not clear. And finally, the technology became boring, and people used it as a tool. And it took a century and a half for tremendous invention with printing to come. Same with later technologies. And I think that's true here. And so we have to look at this, I argue, less as a technology and more simply as a tool. I argue the internet is not a technology. It's a human network. AI is not a competitor. It's a tool that we can use for creation and analysis and other things.
Yeah. And there's a metaphor that I like to use where, you guys travel, you go to the airport and they have the moving sidewalks, right? And there's some percentage of people who get on the moving sidewalk and they stand there.
Stop.
And other people get on and they're Superman with a bit long strides, like ripping through the airport. That's how people use AI. Some people want to get to the same place with less effort. And some people want to use it to get there a lot faster. And for the people who want to get there faster, AI is brilliant. These chatbots are already brilliant at that. So the people who, the striders are it's making them way smarter. Like AI is already making us smarter if we're really using it in the right way and we're curious people who are trying to learn things. You can learn a lot more, a lot faster, and get to the result you're after. But there are a lot of people who are just like, yeah, write this email for me. I'm not even going to read it. Boom. And it's human nature. Some people are never going to care about this stuff. But for those of us who do, it's just going to be a massive accelerant. And I hope that Google, I think that Google will be one of the players that's really going to do a great job of that.
Well, to paraphrase Clay Shirky, he said this about social media, but the tools get interesting when they get boring.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that the same is true of AI. The more it's boring, the less it's over dramatized, the more it's just inside things. And again, it's inside tons of things we do now. We're taking for granted the translation tool it has. It is 100 times better than it used to be.
Right.
Because of Transformer. It's phenomenal. Right. And
I mean, that's killer app. When we're talking about AI, AI feature sets, so there's a million different ways you can go. But I feel like language translation is one of the killer
apps. It's phenomenal. I read the Helsingin Sanomat, a Finnish newspaper in one of the most difficult languages on earth. It's a piece of cake to Google. And it makes it accessible to me in tremendous ways. So that's AI in there. We're using it in new ways. Publishers are using it in new ways. I think once it becomes boring, once it becomes a tool, once the technologists move into the background, and then we take it over and we do what we want with it if we have a purpose for it. Right now, it's in that early phase where, what do I do with this? Because it's so cool. Surely I can find some use, and oftentimes we can't.
Yeah. I was we were in Sitges, Spain, a couple of days ago, and my wife and I were at a restaurant, and there was a sign on the wall that was like in tiles, and I'd seen it all over town. It was in Catalan, which I didn't even, some Catalan looks a lot like Spanish, some looks like I don't even know what they're saying, and so I just used Perplexity's app, and because I'm a paid user, that's why I tend to use the app more. And I'm like, well, what does this say? And basically, what it was that it said something like, please don't dirty the walls, by which I think they meant use graffiti on these old buildings.
Graffiti right on the walls.
And then it said tidiness is a sign of civilization or something like. So there was like a moral to the story, but it was fun. And these are all over town. But then it's sort of like, it's like, okay, well, here's a little more context about those signs, where they came from, when they were put. It's like, that was so satisfying. It was just so gratifying. And again, put it in the glasses so I'm not in a restaurant taking a photo of the wall like an idiot.
Totally. Yeah.
I think the word that's so important there, Mike, is the word this. Yeah. Is what's amazing about these tools, and I saw this yesterday particularly with Google, is the ability to understand the antecedent, the ability to understand what we're referring to. What does this mean? So when they, they used it to put it to a picture of a whiteboard with an arrow. How can I improve something here? The answer was fairly obvious, but the understanding that's what you're referring to, or the two cats in the box, right? I remember many years ago going to the MIT Media Lab the first time, and they showed this then classic demonstration where it was a big deal that someone sat in a chair and they said, put this there, put that here. And for the machine at the time to understand, and it was pointing, right, what was referred to as this and that and there and here was a leap. It was a gigantic leap.
Right.
And now, again, yesterday, where are my glasses?
They're over by the Apple. That I saw that my camera saw 2 minutes ago. Yeah.
And so it's not just language, it's also perspective and intent. Now, meanwhile, these things still can't figure out that your hand can't go through a wall.
Right. Or
they
have
still
5
don't
fingers.
understand reality because they have no connection of reality.
Exactly. What I love is when you ask for an image for an AI that contains words, it doesn't know what a letter is. It's just like, oh, it's this sort of,
it's a shape,
lines. But a little point that you touched on that I haven't heard anybody really comment on this, but the glasses that they teased in the what was it, the Astra demo.
Yeah.
There was a circle in the middle when she was asking about what was on the whiteboard. And I'm pretty sure what that is in lieu of high-tech stuff like Apple has in Vision Pro to know where your gaze is, it basically says, this is where you make your gaze, like put whatever you are asking about in the middle where the circle is. And I thought that was kind of an elegant solution because it's cheaper. Yes.
When I had to train people, this is how old I am. When I trained the Chicago Tribune newsroom on the first word processing systems, I had to explain the concept of a cursor. It was a big deal. People don't understand that at all, right? People have grown up with it, probably like both of you. It's a different matter, but you have to have this thing there where you want to do something.
Right. It's your shared understanding of where you're at.
Yes.
And so, but I thought that was an interesting thing. The other point I like to make about those glasses is that it makes a lot of sense. And I'm pretty sure that they're using the same hardware they use for Google translation glasses, which they killed last year. Right. So they look very similar. And why wouldn't they use those? It's basically, you have some processing, you have internet, you have a phone connection, all that kind of stuff. And so I'm not sure how far along those glasses is the point. They may be just
buy them when
those.
they come out.
Not if they look like that. They're a little bit too thick but
chunky. How about you, Jason?
Possibly.
I mean, I'm on the fence for the Ray-Bans. So, I mean, if they are in the realm of the Ray-Ban kind of quality, then yeah, I would absolutely consider it. I probably would deeply consider it just if they could deliver on what they showed off on the demo, even if they looked a little funky. Coming from Google, I've already got Google Glass. I could add it to my shelf. We've got stuff to talk about. I do need to take just a super quick break, and then we get back into it. And I don't know if we need to go just a tiny bit long. Are either of you okay with that? Or you got an event you got to go to, Jeff, right? Okay. All right. So just one second, and we'll continue talking about this. Oh, okay. All right. We've got more Google, and then we have some OpenAI, and I think that's probably going to be about it for today. But Mike, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say that the thing about the glasses is I think that, first of all, everybody's going to have them at some point because and people need to understand that glasses, AI glasses, don't fall into the same category as the rabbit thing or the other one, the pin, because
humane AI pin.
Exactly. The reason those types of devices will fail precisely is because they're not glasses. Glasses put something over your eyes, next to your ears, within earshot of your mouth, and so you can really use them naturally. Plus, glasses are socially acceptable and universal. Pins are not. And the thing that goes in your pocket, the rabbit thing, well, that's just a phone minus a bunch of features. So I think that glasses are inevitable, and there are companies in Silicon Valley that are basically doing the hardware, and they approach AI companies and say, okay, you sell glasses that are they're OpenAI glasses, and your customers can pick from gazillion different frames that all look like regular glasses. You can have visuals in one eye or both eyes. You can have no visuals in either eye, but you can have a camera or no camera. And anyway, this is an industry that's behind the scenes that hasn't really emerged yet, but is essentially like the PC industry in 1990, let's say, where you have all these sort of commodity hardware players who are basically being used by the software, the operating system companies. And then on top of that, you have an application layer where people can, have app stores and all that kind of stuff. This is coming, and it's going to be really, really interesting. And I don't see how a company like Google, if they don't come out with glasses, will be able to compete with that, because it's going to be really, really powerful. People will put their prescriptions in, they have sunglasses, and already we have smart glasses that cost as little as $160 that give you ChatGPT. And so this category is going to really blow up when people see what it's like to wear these glasses, and when the glasses look like ordinary glasses.
Jason, do you wear contacts?
I do wear contacts. Yes.
So here's the question: would it be weird? As Leo had the whichever glasses he just got, I guess it must be the Meta glasses, but he has contacts, so he was going to take the lenses out. Are we going to see people who wear contacts or have good eyes walking around with glasses with no lenses?
Well, I mean, I guess that depends on the technology and the glasses. If they actually have some sort of head-up display into the lens, you need a lens there.
So would you give up your contacts and go back to prescription lenses?
No, I probably wouldn't. I mean, I guess
Weird,
it depends on price and everything. But I would consider getting glasses like I tried on someone's Ray-Ban Meta glasses at I/O yesterday, because I hadn't had the opportunity to do that, and he did not have a prescription. They were literally just Ray-Bans with transitions, so they would be sunglasses outdoors and indoors. And I envisioned that, like, if I was to get a pair of those glasses, and I wouldn't lock them into just prescription though, because then I'd always have to wear without my contacts, and I want the flexibility.
I mean, the most common usage for Ray-Ban Metas is sunglasses, and those are they have lenses, but they're not prescription. So you can, I think what people would do is they just have clear on, and why not? It will look more normal, which is the whole point.
But you see, it's weird to me, because the glasses exist for a reason. They exist to look through. Right?
Yeah, but there's a whole style component nowadays too. There are people that have no prescription, needs, yet they wear glasses because they look cool or whatever. I
wonder if there'll be something new invented. For people who don't need don't need this, but need this.
Well, I've been predicting for a long time that at some point it'll be common for people who don't need glasses to wear glasses, because they want all the electronics and they want to look normal.
For sure.
And so look at all the things that are normalized, become normalized. One of them is having a Bluetooth thing in your ear, walking around in public, talking like
so true.
And this is totally acceptable now.
Yeah, maybe you point that out in your article, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I showed on a little bit earlier, but everybody should go to Machine Society and check out We're All Talking to AI Now, which you made the really, really salient point in this article, which I totally agree with, which is for a lot of people, talking to an AI agent and, hearing it talking back to you can be a little off-putting. It requires practice. But what you point out in here is, like, we've encountered this so many times, and we always push through it because the technology is worth it. Bluetooth headset being one. First time you ever popped a Bluetooth earbud, on your ear and felt weird with it popping out of your ear and having to talk through it and hear, it was a different experience. But at some point we got used to it. Same for, we got our voice to command our phone.
Maybe they wear AI hats.
Right.
No, glasses. I mean, glasses just make the most sense to me. Like, I don't see why it wouldn't be that, just full stop.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what other, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, that the company, that one of the leading companies in Silicon Valley that's doing this is called Avigent, and they make huge numbers of different styles of glasses, but they don't sell glasses. They build them for companies who do AI to put their AI product in those glasses. And so again, they're sort of in stealth mode. They have high-tech light. They have a light engine that broadcasts, images onto the lens, and they're working with another company. They got a Snapdragon AR1 chip in there. And this category is going to blow up. I was a little surprised that neither OpenAI or Google announced, okay, here are the glasses they're shipping this summer.
Right.
I really expected that, and it's really going to be a problem for them, except for the fact that most of the AI glasses actually use OpenAI, so they're kind of set with third-party people doing this kind of thing. But this is going to be a huge category, and again, some of the glasses are indistinguishable from ordinary glasses.
Yeah, they're getting there, and if they're not, already there, next couple of years, I think we're going to see a lot more advancements. Would be my guess there. We do have at least one other thing that we need to talk about before the end of the show, because I knew it was going to be Google heavy, but prior to the Google event, like the day before, OpenAI had its event, which that it announced sort of last minute. I think like maybe over the weekend.
They were going to do it the week before, and then they rescheduled it for Monday, the day before Google's I/O.
Everybody was guessing that it had something to do with search. OpenAI said, no, it has nothing to do with search. Ultimately, what was it? It was a new GPT 4.0, not 5. So, of course, some people are like, well, are we diminishing returns at this point? Why can't we hit 5? Why is it 4.0? But the O stands for omni. That is text, speech, video. So it's adding speech to the mix. And yeah, I mean, they did a basically like a half an hour demo, essentially a live demo with this thing.
Right.
Like we were talking about earlier, has that really, they've cut down the latency, which is, I think, pretty important for this sort of thing. It's really close to like human interaction levels.
And the cost.
And the cost, well, it's free to use
but I mean, their cost, like on the back end, they've reduced their own costs, which is an important thing. And this is one of the things that you have to contrast against the Google demo. So they came out and they said, okay, we have this omni-channel multimodal thing that actually processes video and can see what you're looking at, and you can chat with what it's looking at presently. Google did the same thing, but they said twice as fast, half the cost. Google didn't say anything about the speed or the cost, and I don't know. It's doing some really sophisticated things. We don't know what the cost is for you, the consumer, or the back end operator, and we don't know about performance. And they said it's going to be later in the year, so you can't really compare. You seems like you compare these directly, but you can't really. One of them is pretty real, and they're making claims about its viability essentially, and the other one is doing a demo, and you don't know what the costs are, what the speed is, any of that stuff. So you have to take the Google one more with a grain of salt than OpenAI's.
For sure.
So I thought that it was going to be available now. If I go to ChatGPT on the web, I still have 3.5, and I have to pay for 4.0. 4.0.
Right.
4.0.
And the voice, the Scarlett Johansson voice is later, right? And initially only for pro paid subscribers.
Now, there was Saul Khan, who we've had on this show.
Yes, indeed.
You're close. Actually, side AC is called the adjacent side to the angle alpha.
It's got that very California.
They deliberately made it sound like Scarlett Johansson, which I think is a good mistake.
Can you
find well, we had Sal Khan, founder of Khan Academy, on episode 10, I believe. And, it was all about the impact of AI, the future of AI's impact on education. He was talking about a lot of this. And like this video that we're showing right now, if you're watching the video version, you can sort of hear it, is about using GPT 4.0 with his son to tutor around a mathematical concept. And, OpenAI released. I mean, there's just an insane amount of videos that are all on this tip. Using the camera to look at a dog and interact the AI with the dog, and all sorts of really conversational, interesting demos. And
to this that Jeff is not going to like, which was the fact that they're trying to perceive your emotions and reply accordingly. It's a little invasive. Don't worry about my emotions. Just answer my freaking question.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't like the word creepy in this sense. I think it's non-specific and tends toward moral panic. But I was creeped out by that. I think that, and I'm not a big privacy person by reputation. I care about privacy, but by reputation, I'm not. Well, that seems like a bit of an invasion, and it's the wrong relationship with the machine. It's a machine. Right. It's software. It's a program, and behind it is all kinds of amazing data and a lot of capability. But the relationship, I think OpenAI, especially because they're trying to push this AGI thing. They're trying to say, see how human it almost is. Just a little bit farther, and we're going to be you. And
Right.
that's BS. It's not the
Mhm.
case. It's not true. It's not going to happen in my view. Come back to me and sometime if I'm still alive, you can tell me wrong. If we
All the humanization, even if it's able to perceive general emotions and to speak like an ordinary human, should all be it should all be directed at look at how not at look at how human I am, but at like you not noticing it. Like I just want
Yeah.
to not think, oh, that sounds too robotic. That doesn't sound robotic
Yes.
enough. But like Siri is the worst at this. Like Siri will actually crack jokes and stuff that are like really dumb dad jokes, and you're just like you're just
Yeah.
wasting my time. I don't have time for you to pretend like you have a personality. The testing on this should be all about the the tone of voice not being something that distracts you or that you notice.
It's a fuzzy line though between those two things, because and we talked about this, throughout this conversation, is like, well, does it really need to sound like a real person? A person that you're used to talking to? Does it need to have that accent and that vocal fry and all these elements? But at the same time, like if we plan to communicate in with these chatbots in the future, like as humans, it's just more natural to talk to other humans.
Right.
And if these can get to the point to where we don't perceive a difference, then that's the ultimate kind of user interface, is that, okay, well, we just talk to it as if it were, knowing that it's not,
that's
but as
that
if
direction.
it were.
Right. We talked to it. So Ethan Mollick wrote the book Co-Intelligence, which is out now, which I'm listening to now. And he argues in there that it's not human and you shouldn't think it's human, but he says we should treat it as a human because we'll get the best performance out of it because it's designed that way. It's designed to interact with us as human. And I take the point, but maybe that design is wrong.
That feels like a bug and not a feature to me. It shouldn't depend on how we treat it. And I wrote a really what I thought was extremely interesting piece, I don't know, like 10 years ago or 8 years ago or something, for Fast Company, which is like, don't teach your kids to be polite to Alexa, right? Or to any of those chatbots, because you're teaching it the wrong thing. It's not. And I talked about, why do we have manners? Why do we have politeness? There it is. And the reason we have manners, the whole point of manners is to show respect and concern for other human beings. And if we teach kids to have manners to an AI, or to, in this case, a voice assistant, we're teaching them that it doesn't matter that whether you're software running through your programs just because this thing has a voice. And I made the point that, like, if you don't say please and thank you to a jar of peanut butter the kid is opening, parents aren't going to care. But then there are people who say please and thank you to Alexa because it has a voice. This is ridiculous. The assistant appliance has exactly the same sentience as the jar of peanut butter. They're exactly the same. You should be treated the same. That we should teach kids that it doesn't matter if you're polite or not. It's not a person. You have to be polite to people, and there are good reasons for that.
Though on certain days, I am grateful to a jar of peanut butter.
Yes,
I will say that.
Do you tell it that?
In my head, I do. Oh, thank you.
It might want to hear that from time to time.
I'm
Jeff.
glad
I'm
you're
just saying.
Well, if you don't mind, Jason, I'd like to jump ahead to the story that's last on the rundown.
I think that's the obvious next step. Yes, absolutely.
Kevin Roose is at it again. So Kevin Roose of the New York Times, who's a very good tech writer, but in my next book, The Web We Weave, out in October, I take him to task for his relationship with Sydney, the personality of ChatGPT, when it was introduced in Bing. And we all know the story now that Kevin reports that Sydney fell in love with him and wanted to break up his marriage. If you read the transcripts, it was ridiculous. Kevin had to try over and over and over again to play gotcha with it, to make it do what it was not designed to do. Even when there were guardrails, he kept going. So he's blaming the machine for it gave him what he demanded. Yeah. And so now, so it was all negative. Oh, I couldn't sleep that night. BS. It's ridiculous. It was moral panic.
Yeah.
So now we have Kevin coming back again, that he decided to make friends with a whole bunch of AI chat modules. And it's just as wrong the other way. They're not your friends. You're treating them wrong. You're setting up the context for the public wrong, I think, here. The value is not in that. Yes, they can be used for companionship for old people. I get that argument. But they're jars of peanut butter. I'm going to use this from now on, Mike. They're jars of peanut butter.
That's great.
So I think that it's bad technology reporting because it misrepresents what the machines are and what they can do.
Yeah.
It misrepresents the relationship that I think we should have with them, and it
By
sets
the
it
way,
up.
I think they stole my body for that one weightlifter guy. I think
Yeah,
that
that looks strikingly similar. Yeah,
just like me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 But it sets it up too for what's going to happen. One of these things is going to be somebody's going to put up a transcript of the machine being mean to somebody or mean to Kevin, and then they're going to go off on a moral panic rant, and it's all they're living in the wrong universe.
Right.
So thank you for my rant.
Meanwhile, there
Yeah.
is an issue with people using maybe Kevin Roos readers or others using AI chatbots for companionship. One of the things I've noticed for
Absolutely.
many years are there these sort of virtual influencers on Instagram and elsewhere where they actually get modeling deals. They represent brands, all this kind of stuff. But people they'll do an Instagram post of this AI generated person, and they get 5,000 comments from people saying, "Oh, you look great," and it's like if they think that that's a person and don't know it's just a cartoon, then that's troubling. And if they know that it's fake and comment to it anyway, then I don't know. There's something weird going on there. Why are you Who are you talking to? So anyway, it's going to be a weird phenomenon. It's going to get weirder and weirder the more Scarlett Johansson-y it gets with AI chatbots. And some people are very lonely. I think her was, again, I haven't seen it like Jason, but I know enough about it. I don't need to see it. That sort of thing is absolutely going to happen in terms of somebody just like thinking that this is a friend. Happened with Xiao Ice in China a decade ago. Which, by the way, I think is still in existence, where Xiao Ice is an AI model, I think. It's not generative AI, but it's based on what people say on social media in China. And so you have these conversations and it will sort of return to you like the kinds of things people say on social. And, supposedly millions of Chinese people tell it that they love it and have a relationship. It's their friend and all this kind of stuff. It's really sad. And I think that one of the things I like to do with my newsletter is sort of like, is going, because over the next 10 years, it's going to be really crazy how many fake things there are and how convincing those fake things are, all manner of fake things. And especially important for children, that children grow up and know the difference between what's real and what isn't, because the ability to simulate is overwhelming with these tools, and we can't lose the plot about who we're interacting with, what we're looking at, and all the rest.
Yeah, how much of it is awareness around the role playing element of, oh yeah, I'm chatbot, this is my chatbot name, blah blah blah, and yes, it's got a story, but I think was it in this article where it's kind of compared to like a grown up Tamagotchi or something like that, and how much is that awareness there that this chatbot isn't real? And at what point does that crossover happen? And like, what is the impact of something like that? I guess we don't really know.
The irony is that old folks get upset with young people for staring at their phone, thinking they're interacting with a machine, when in fact they're interacting with a human being on the other end of it. In this case, though, they may well start interacting with the machine.
Right.
It's been around for a long time. I remember Smarter Child was started by two friends of mine, Active Buddy back in the day. It was beyond Eliza and Next Generation. It was just a bit of fakery, but it was charming in its way. I think you're right, Mike. As long as people understand what's the machine and what's not, what's the harm?
Yep. What's the harm? Yeah. I think
and I think it's our role as journalists and influencers and so on to constantly remind people that if somebody's lonely and lack human presence in their life, a chatbot is not the answer. We gotta interact with people. That's what you need.
And so is that the kind of lack of responsibility of Kevin Roos's article from your perspective, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, he was straightforward that he was talking to a machine, but he was modeling a behavior with it and an expectation of it.
At the same time, he's modeling a behavior that a lot of people are going to come to that realization on their own, regardless of that article. But you're right; that gives that a certain bit of distance that. And
I think that a similar bit of scorn needs to go to OpenAI, because this Scarlett Johansson chatbot voice thing, where it says things like, "Oh, you're making me blush," and all this kind of it's just really the wrong direction.
To impugn human motive. And Emily Bender is brilliant about this, the linguist at the University of Washington, who was a co-author of the Stochastic Parrots paper. And she reminds us that when we see meaning in what OpenAI says, OpenAI has no meaning. We are imputing that. It is our desire to see that meaning. And we see it through the linguistics that are used. And so all the verbs that were used, I think that it doesn't write, it doesn't create, it doesn't think. It doesn't believe, but now it's complicated on the next level of, as we said at the beginning of the show, these voices with prosody, and it's just a bit of a fraud. That's my
I like Jerome Lanier's conceptualization of generative AI, in that it's a way that humans collaborate, and that's I think that's a really good way to look at chatbots and some of these other things. It's like we're pouring everything into the pot, and we're interacting with many human beings, essentially. That's where the stuff is coming from. And so that's a good way to look at these things, rather than, oh, it's a fake person,
right,
or it's a person,
right, at all. We have definitely pushed up against the time, so we got to wrap this up. But this was every bit as awesome of a conversation as I knew it would be, with this week in particular, and with you joining us, Mike Elgan.
Thank you.
So great to get the chance to talk about this on a new show with you. So,
absolutely. Congratulations on the new show. I don't think I've congratulated you yet, so congratulations.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
MachineSociety.ai is where you can go to read Mike's work, but you're also writing in other places too.
Oh,
This is your own destination, but you're all over the map.
Yeah, this is what I write for me, and I also have a good subscriber base. It's actually a good living, but this is, I'm really excited about this newsletter.
Love it. We'll keep up the great work. We'll definitely reach out when the news stars align once again, and we can get you back on here, Mike. It's
wonderful.
Been a pleasure.
Anytime. Right
on. And Jeff, of course, Gutenberg.com for all of your bookly goodness. Yeah, thank you. And for dressing up for the recording, which is something I didn't do this
special
week.
occasion.
Well, we do this show every Wednesday, and we do a live recording of it. If you want to watch it recorded live, we actually have our biggest turnout this week, so that's pretty awesome. 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern on the TechSploder YouTube channel at youtube.com/@TechSploder. Be sure and like, rate, review, subscribe wherever you happen to listen or watch. And of course, like I said earlier, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/AI Inside Show. We offer ad-free shows, early access to videos, Discord community, regular hangouts with me and Jeff and the rest of the community, and a whole lot more. We also have executive producers of this show. If you're of a certain level, Dr. Do and Jeffrey Maricini are our executive producers.
Thank you, bosses.
Thank you deeply for your support. And thank you for watching and listening to this episode of AI Inside. It's been a lot of fun. We'll see you next time on the show. Bye-bye, everybody.